Howdy! Let's talk about sponsorships in women's sports. Did you know recent studies found that sponsor retention rates for men's and women's sports are basically the same? Yep, even though women's sports often have lower media exposure and attendance, sponsors are staying loyal. Here's the cool part. The study shows that sponsors can get similar returns on investment from women's sports as they do from men's. That means, despite historical spending gaps, women's sports properties are proving their value. So how does this impact sponsorship budgets in the future? Well, think about it. If sponsors are getting good returns from both genders, they might start allocating more money to women's sports. And that could mean closing the investment gap. And here's something interesting. Sponsoring women's sports is less expensive. A title sponsorship for an LPGA event costs way less than a PGA event. But sponsors still get a lot of value, like flexibility in how they use their sponsorship assets and access to talent. Now let's talk about industry trends. The study found that sponsors from different industries behave differently. Banks are less likely to pull out of women's sports, while tech firms are more likely to exit. Why? Tech companies often get huge benefits early on, so they don't always stick around. So, what's the takeaway? Women's sports are delivering value to sponsors, and that's changing the game. As future sport marketers, you'll need to think about how these trends could influence sponsorship strategies. Who's ready to help close the sponsorship gap and bring even more attention to women's sports?